So this is some stories of me longline fishing back in 1988, spring of '88. Here's one of the fish we caught. It was a 400-pound halibut. Everybody in the cannery came out to take a look at that bad boy when we hoisted it out of our hole. Um, anyways, my friend who's in the picture, Rob, he called me up, asked me if I'd be interested in going up for a couple months and fishing up in Alaska for longline fishing, and I was just substitute teaching, and I asked my wife Pam, and um, she said okay, and we had um, two girls. They were young at the time, and actually I got back the day after our youngest one, Emily, turned one. I got back the day after her birthday. Anyways, we get up there and um, so there was um, this. The skipper would call us. Rob and I would call us ranchers, and um, and I never understood why he was kept calling us ranchers. And I finally asked him, like, "Why do you call us ranchers?" And he's like, "Well, um, you, if you were," um, he goes, "Let me put it this way: if you are so ignorant of what we do here. I mean, if you came from a ranch, we're on a boat. I mean, if if I was on a ranch and you came from a longline, fishing boat, and that's all you've done in your life, you came to ranch, I'd call you a longliner because you don't know anything about ranching. Well, it's kind of the same thing. You don't know anything about longline fishing, so you're a rancher." It's like, oh, okay, I get it. It just means I I lack experience and stuff. I said, anyways, but I kind of proved him wrong. And Rob and I actually, usually when you work for your first year, you're called a greenhorn also, and you just get a half share. You don't get a full share, you get a half. But we both worked so hard and did such a good job. He gave us full shares. Um, and but one day we were out fishing, and it was rough, and um, and this is like, I don't know, we've been out there. The first 2 days I would get, here, let me back up. The first 2 days I'd always be sick when we went out, and I'd be barfing for 2 days, but still having to work like 20 hours a day. So it was like, it was intensely hard and very dangerous. I mean, and this one time I'm barfing, and I grab the rail and I lean over the side to barf, and as I barf, I mean, the wind blew sideways, and I got some of the slime on the side of my face, and I'm like, oh, gross. And then right as I'm thinking, oh, gross, this wave, rogue wave came up like in my face and hit the side of the boat and splashed and just washed my face. Luckily, I was hanging on the rails; it didn't knock me over, and um, it was just so funny. The barf, and then the disgust, and then the clean, and I was like, oh, okay. and um, but we were out fishing like day 5 or 6, and it was nasty weather. I mean, and you'd set your gear, it'd be like an anchor buoy and 3 miles of rope with a leader going after every 15 feet with a hook and bait on it, and um, and then another anchor and buoy, and you would make, that was called a set, and we set 3 of them, and we that day, and we pulled in 2 that evening, and it was just, we the skipper let us take a break and sleep, and so we were sleeping, and and after 2 days, I was done being seasick always. And we wake up the next morning and it's even rougher. And the skipper's like, we're gonna pull this in and we're going in. This is just insane. And we get out there, and I mean, the waves are coming up over the bow. I mean, we're taking green water on the deck where it's like up to your knees, between your knees and your thigh. Just thick water. I mean, not spray, but just water that would go, at the highest point between your knee and thigh, and you're just having to kind of hang on when that would happen. And so the gear's coming in, and the fish are coming on board, and this one we're black cod fishing. We're not halibut fishing. We're black cod fishing, and we had to cut the heads off and then throw the fish down in the hole. And me and this other guy we're across from each other, and we're cutting heads off and throwing the bodies in the hole, and then hanging on when a big wave hit and the water would get deep, and then trying to grab a fish. I mean, we were losing a lot of fish getting washed overboard, and then reach down and grab a fish, and this was our first big trip out. And I go to the guy, I can't remember his name, but I go, oh no, first I look up at the skipper. He's up in the wheelhouse, and he looks down at me, and I just give him a thumbs up and a smile. Like, this is awesome. And he just looks down at me, and he just shakes his head. And I'm like, and I cross to the guy. I go, have you ever been out in bad weather like this? And to my horror, he's like this 35-year-old guy. To my horror, he goes, no, I'm crapping my pants right now. And I'm like, oh. And so all of a sudden I'm not thinking this is so cool anymore, and I grab a fish, cut its head off, throw it in the hole, and hang on, and I look up again at the skipper, and he sees my face that I'm like, kind of like, ashen face and kind of scared, and he gives me this look and goes, and so for the next like 3 hours, I'm working, and I'm wondering, are we okay? I mean, and it was scary, and we finally got the gear in and got as many fish as we could, besides the one that just got washed overboard, and we got out of there, and that was pretty weird. Another time we were setting gear, and I'm in the back, and it'd be like 10 garbage cans full of coiled up rope, that you'd have to, Al, this other guy, he was one who would tie him one end to the other end and connect them, because you had to make sure the knot was a good knot, and then slide it into place, and it'd be this chute that you'd slide them into, and they just, I mean, you're going fast, and the stuff's just, going out and rattling, and we're standing there, and all of a sudden it got quiet, and all of a sudden you realize it's quiet, and I look, and a hook had caught the edge of the chute, and the line is like coming up taut out of the water, and like an idiot, we got knives all over the place. I grab a knife that's stuck in the ceiling, and I reach to just cut the leader, and Al grabs me, and just as I touch it, he's pulling me back. He grabs my shoulders and pulls me backwards, and right as I touch that leader, it snaps, and like a volcano, the rope is just, with the leader and hooks and bait, is just hitting the ceiling and then going out, and hitting the ceiling and going out, and it was just right in my face, and he pulled me back just in time, and he spins me around. He goes, ever do anything. I mean, the hook will break, the leader will break. Don't ever get close. Stay back. And if he hadn't grabbed me, I could have easily been. If I'd have been hooked, I'd have been fish bait. I mean, um, it was just me being a rancher. Being a rancher, just such a dangerous job and just intense. Um, a couple of the guys ended up getting, experienced guys ended up getting hooked. And when you get hooked, there's just two options, or four options. One is to quickly unhook, but everything's moving. You quickly unhook it. The other one would be to, grab a knife and cut the leader. The other one would be to hold on tight and the hook will, come out. And two of our crew, I mean, that 2 months I was up there, chose door number 3 and held on tight, and the hook ended up going through their hand and coming out like the back or coming out the tip of their finger and just messing up their hand bad. And hearing a grown man scream, yeah, pretty ugly, and just thankful, it never happened to me. And but when we caught that big one, it was the last. We fished for like black cod and gray cod the whole time, but the last day was a 24-hour opening for halibut, and we went out halibut fishing, and we caught that. Caught like several over 200 pounds, but we caught that big one, and they took a section of the wall of the side out on deck, and so you wouldn't have to pull them up over the railing. You just pull them up on the deck, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and he stopped and stopped the gear, and he pulled the line over, and the fish's nose was like pointing right at me, and this like 4 inches were sticking out of the water, and I couldn't tell how big the fish was, and I was the number one gaffer for some reason. I hit behind the head, and I pulled thinking I was going to yank it a bunch out of the water, and it barely moved. I mean, it moved like 3 or 4 inches, and I pulled as hard as I could, and then boom, another guy gaffed, and boom, another guy gaffed, and then boom, the skipper gaffed, and all 4 of us pulled that thing up on the deck, and they pulled it right up on top of me. I mean, I'm trying to slide out, and they're pulling it on, and it was pretty much on top of me, and luckily it didn't like flop. It would have just crushed me, and I slid out, and and he cut the leader, and I just walked around, and I picked up the tail and put its tail fin across my hips and pushed it into the boat more, and then I just walked around front and slashed its gill so it'd bleed out, and it just laid there, and then I picked up his tail again and slid him over to the hole and just pushed him down the hole. And then you want to make sure they land upside down, and he landed upside down with the white showing, and just didn't move a muscle. It was just this huge fish that couldn't believe how big it was. And but yeah, that was just the most dangerous work I'd ever done in my life, and hard. Like I said, I'd be sick the first 2 days out, always, just barfing like a dog. And the third morning, I'd wake up, and I'd be hungry, and I wouldn't be sick anymore. And then it was actually, I liked the work. I liked catching fish, and this last little quick story. Me and the other guy, we were, it was we were out just, catching fish, and their fish are like up to our knees, like between our knee and our like lower thigh. I mean, just thick with fish, and we're just don't even have to look. I mean, just grab a fish, cut its head off, throw the head overboard, fish in the hole, and we're going as fast as we can. And all of a sudden I realize, we're actually competing against each other here. And he's just cutting the head off straight, and I'm like going slice, and I'm making a little bit of a point to get a little bit more meat. And but still doing it fast, and throwing ahead, and the skipper, he's watching, and he comes down like after a half an hour. He comes down, and we're both just going as fast as we can, and he comes down, and he he puts a fish side by side, and he sees that extra little point, and he tells the experienced guy, he goes, "You need to start cutting heads off like Mikey." And I got my head down, and I'm just cutting it, and I'm laughing to myself, and he was not happy. And but it's just that little extra bit of meat. I mean, it adds up when you're cutting thousands of fish. And but I'm going right-handed. My hand's getting tired, and so I switched, and I could do it left-handed. I could go either way, and that guy was only right-handed, and we spent hours cutting fish, and I don't know how he kept going with just right-handed. I mean, he couldn't give that hand a rest. I just don't know how he did it. That was amazing. But anyways, so I get home 2 months later. I walk in the door, and day after my youngest daughter's birthday, and our other daughter was going to turn 3 in like 3 months. And my wife Pam gives me a big hug, and our 2 daughters backed away from me. They didn't recognize me. They were afraid of me, and I couldn't believe it. It was such a horrible experience. It's like I told myself, I'm never doing this again. I don't care. I'll scrub toilets. I'm not doing this again, because it was the worst feeling, having your daughters back away from you. But anyways, long line stories. But that's, as a teacher, I would end up calling some of my students rancher when they just do something, when they just lacked any kind of experience on something, or just didn't know how to do something. I'd be, "You rancher." And they never knew what I meant by that. But anyways, I would just think of my old skipper up on a long line boat and think of that. Anyways, long lining.